stage. Beside me here is Maurice Buckley, who is the Executive Chairman of the Office of Public Works, the organisation that so ably manages so many of our great houses and monuments, 70 monuments, I gather, historic properties and indeed beautiful houses and parks. We're also joined on the edge there by Tina O'Dwyer, the Director of the Tourism Space, which is an online training and events platform that supports tourism business leaders. And we're joined too by Marcus Treacy, Operations Manager of the Killarney Park and Ross Hotels, which are his family's business. And Maurice has worked in Geneva, New York and Dublin, and he's now back in Kerry. But we're going to start with you, Maurice, because you've got the most wonderful portfolio of places which are indeed under your care, and I'm going to invite you to give us just a quick 2-minute run through some of the beautiful places that the OPW looks after.
Great. Okay, will I do here?
Yep.
Do we have a zapper? Or?
Oh. Here's Manuel's way here. Yep.
I'll stand up here for a moment.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Okay. So I suppose the OPW, we're very much in John's world of climate change and flooding and everything else, but today I thought I'd just maybe give a couple of examples from local examples of maybe different aspects of sustainability, just to prompt some questions. This is Doombeg on the Dingle Peninsula. It's one of 780 sites actually that the OPW are responsible for in terms of conservation, and of those 70 are visitor service sites. But the Doombeg was famous, was in the news last year because the cliff that you see there fell away. Half the cliff fell away, and the site is threatened by climate, not necessarily climate change, but maybe it's threatened faster. Just the 2 or 3 cliff falls over the last while. Natural process happens, but we've had to recognise that this site cannot be saved. It will be lost. And the choice was, what do we do? And the temptation was just to close the site. It's very, very dangerous. It's actually dangerous in the middle of summer to go walking there. But we said no. And what we've done here, as you see in the schematic, is put a walkway down close to the site. And if you stand in that red eyelet there, the engineers assure me you are reasonably safe, especially in the middle of summer. And at least you can see the site, and it will probably fall in stages. And this will become of international interest to people. It's only 2 or 3 places in the world where you can see a heritage site literally in this condition. So it's interesting from that point of view, kind of sustainability backwards, if you like. The interest in the site is actually increasing. But also, the OPW don't manage the site, but locally. There is a visitor centre, there's a restaurant developed locally, providing local employment, and I think that's very good, and I think we should be supporting it, and I think it's good to see it happening like that.
But what when it's gone? What about those things?
Yeah.
I mean,
you were going to give me 2 minutes.
I know, yeah. Go on. Go on.
Skellig Michael, yeah, beautiful site, one of only 2 World Heritage Sites, along with Newgrange, that we have in Ireland. Beautiful, I mean, it's got all the religious heritage significance, it's landscape, botany, bird colonies, all of that, but incredibly difficult to access, and unfortunately, in recent years, with climate change, the number of rockfalls during the winter has been increasing, and the days in which the boats can actually land has been decreasing, so it's more difficult to get on the rock and to see the beautiful beehive huts and monastery there. But maybe the good news is that we're trying to improve, when you can get on the island of the rock, the experience. The white building you can see on the right hand side there is the recent lighthouse, which the Commissioners of Irish Lights have transferred now, or are transferring to the OPW. We're trying to make a small visitor centre there, and luxuries like toilets on the rock, and the smaller, higher up building rooms you can see there, the old lighthouse, and we're already working to make a very treacherous but a pathway up there, so, and it won't be as dangerous as the steps you can see going up. Anyone who's been on the rock, it's extremely dangerous, so there will be more things that one can do on Skelligs going forward, which makes it even better. Garnish Island. I just wanted to mention, and I don't think it's been said very much today, biodiversity, ecotourism is huge, and the OPW are seeing across our garden sites a lot of interest. Garnish Island, just off Glengarriff Bay, has an incredible microclimate all of its own, and that supports all sorts of plants and trees, southern hemisphere trees that don't grow easily in other places. And there's a huge amount of interest. In summer it's at maximum capacity. Derrynane House is another site that has more capacity, and Derrynane House is also in a microclimate area. There's a botanical, small offspring of the botanical gardens there. So that is a green site for environmental reasons. It's a blue beach nearby, and it's a dark skies protected area for astronomy. 2 years ago, I don't think I would have mentioned any of those three things, and they wouldn't be in the publicity. They're still on page 2, but they're coming up the scales, and numbers visiting Phoenix Park, Castletown House, Kilkenny Castle, the gardens, Doneraile, they're up and up and up, growing much faster than visitors going to historical properties.
Okay.
I'll leave it there.
That's grand.
Yeah,
your 2 minutes is well gone over at this stage, but this is fascinating, so thank you very much.
You did ask a question.
Yeah, well listen then, just let's go to Doonbeg. Doonbeg's doomed, right?
Yeah.
And is there nothing you can do about it?
No, because and we did try, it wasn't a light decision to say that this had to be given up, because it's a clay cliff. It will over time just fade away, and it would need a whole battlement to protect it, and that would destroy the whole value of the site. Now it may be 50 years, it may be 100 years before the site is lost, but it is a natural process. When the outer skin was lost, it'll rapidly erode, and eventually it'll become a freestanding rock there in the sea.
Well then the Skelligs, what about the battle between the maintenance of this incredible site and your need to provide what you call a safe path? Are the archaeologists up in arms about the notion of putting in a safe path?
Well, I mean, it won't be safe in the traditional way, and the steps going to the monastery are not safe. I mean, I lie awake at night worrying about what might happen, and a decision has been taken at that site and at several sites not to put in handrails, not to put in the safety features you might expect. And it's a terrible balance, and it's very hard to defend if somebody really wants to say you make the wrong choice. But the choice we're making is that if you tell the people what is the danger, and people have a free choice, and as long as they're informed and they know not to bring children, and they know if they're elderly not to go there, we have to respect free choice, and there is an experience there, and even though there is a risk, there is also an incredible value to experience this, to bring it back, to relay it, and you have to find a balance. But it is a tough one. Well,
then the last question to you before I go to the rest of the panel. The constant battle that there is in tourism. Number one, Fáilte Ireland and the other tourism bodies wanting to increase footfall, numbers, bed nights, whatever. It's very much a numbers game. And yet people like yourselves, who are protectors of the natural heritage and our national inheritance in terms of the beautiful houses like Doneraile, your need to be conservatives as well as allowing access. How do you get that balance right, Maurice?
It is a very difficult balance to get right. The short-term commercial possibilities versus the long-term sustainability. I mean, what we're trying to do is, all these sites, they're not just heritage sites, they are economic opportunities for the country. So we have to develop that. But by controlling the numbers, but how do you control the numbers? What we're trying to do is maybe extend the physical reach of the sites, so that, for example, in Kilmainham in Dublin, there's a tiny old jail which is huge visitor numbers. We redeveloped the courthouse beside it, so that now we can get almost twice the number in, but it doesn't feel busy because there's more to do. And that's the thinking behind the Skelligs there as well, that you can have more people, but they're in different places, so that there isn't that crowd feel. Newgrange, I mean, people come over from Stonehenge to see what was done in Brúnaboyne and Newgrange. So there's a visitor centre away from the monument, and that's where you see the information and everything at, and then you go by bus in controlled numbers to experience the actual monument itself. So there are ways to do it. It takes investment, and I mean, it is great The OBW, our mission is to conserve the monuments, but with Fáilte Ireland and tourism funding and local rural development, there's much more of a sense now. A monument, a heritage site is in a community, and it is of huge value to the community, and it is ours. But it's not our history, it is ours as Irish people, and we should develop it.
But managed well, and I must say that the New Grange site, to me, is managed very well.
And it's a new centre just opening there now.
Yeah, but you know, the fact that an awful lot of the explanation is done off-site, and then numbers are controlled because you get your bus going up there, and the guides are just wonderful. And it's, you know, I wasn't in favour of interpretative centres until I went to New Grange, and I saw the extent to which it took some of the weight off the actual monument and allowed certain things to happen off-site, and then controlled the access. But Tina, can I come to you, because we were talking, yourself and myself, last night about the Cliffs of Moher, and I was giving you the usual line about the over-emphasis on the Cliffs of Moher and the buses crowding up there and the day trips from Dublin, and the fear just of over-emphasis on one site, which in turn was in danger perhaps of causing reaction among the community around it. What's the answer to that over-emphasis on one site?
Yeah, the million-dollar question, I suppose. The answer, I think part of what we spoke about last night is the Cliffs of Moher and other very busy sites and crowded sites are the sites that have done really well in the marketing-led tourism model. You know, they've grown their numbers in the growing the numbers game, and they've done that really, really well. And so I think we do need to be careful to kind of all of a sudden not cast them as the problems of the tourism industry. Because they have now got to deal with issues like New Grange had to deal with as well, they're quickly coming up with solutions to that kind of, to handling these numbers. What the dangers are, I heard this recently, someone saying that, you know, the problem isn't so much the over-touristed sites as the under-touristed ones immediately beside them, you know, and that we can try and deflect traffic now from the Cliffs of Moher, and that is an immediate knock-on effect to a whole society and community and sub-industry that's immediately around it, that would like an awful lot more visitors than it has at the moment. So the solution lies in strategies that are about dispersal, that are about spreading the visitors, the things that Fáilte Ireland have worked into their strategy now, but to do that in a planned way that involves communities, that involves the benefit and the you know, the challenges faced by communities that host tourism, and not to simply disperse it. Would be wrong to just disperse everyone to the Lee Cliffs and in 20 years they have the same problem. It's a much more kind of nuanced dispersal. Yeah.
But I mean, is there a way that the authorities can maybe ration the access by saying to certain operators, well, you can only get access to this site if you're also visiting another site of the area?
Yeah, the Cliffs of Moher is a good example of that as well, just in recent times. The problem with the community, I think, that has been voiced around the Cliffs is that there are very tiny roads and communities that might be 5, 10, 15 kilometres from the Cliffs that are suffering the traffic of large coaches. They can't use their own roads, can't get in and out of their farms, they can't travel to schools, that type of thing. And the reality is that coach licences are granted by local authorities and the National Roads Authority. They're granted with conditions of when you can travel and when not, where you can stop and when not, and that can be enforced. But the other thing the Cliffs have done now is, and they're actually applauded for it, is any new licences for people who want to visit the Cliffs come with the condition that you must visit another paid attraction in the county, or you must stay in the county, or, you know, they can work that in. So they can't quickly revoke everyone's license, but any new licenses, and as they're being renewed, will involve this kind of incentive and indeed requirement to disperse and to leave some benefit in the community. The difficulty of the day tour is that the community locally takes the challenges, but the economic benefit is elsewhere. So
so that sort of day tour, which of course, as you know, is rampant now. People have a little bit of time, but the day tour allows them to do the Cliffs of Moher, to do the Giant's Causeway, but not to see anything much in between.
Yeah, and it unfortunately makes some of our beautiful heritage spots a tick the box attraction, and that's probably not sustainable for the whole industry overall.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the New Grange site, I remember bringing an English goddaughter there on a really wet, miserable day in February, and we parked at the interpretive centre, and then we took the bus. And the guide was terrific, you know, and the first thing he sort of said to us is, listen, I want you to enjoy yourself, but more than anything, I do not want you in any way to damage this site. So if you can keep your hands off the wall, and if you can keep yourself from touching any of the lovely little etchings or whatever that are in here, that would be important. In fact, not only would it be important, he said, I will ensure that you do. And he was great, he sort of put us in our place. But I remember standing there and him saying, this is older than the pyramids.
Yeah.
And suddenly, you know, you really had a sense of the extraordinary history and richness of this site, including all that we don't know about it. But it was a moment, I remember, feeling, wow,
Yeah.
you know.
And there's a confidence in an attraction at that point that can say, yes, we allow you to visit here,
Yes.
and here's the terms and conditions attached to that, in a very welcoming and a very hospitable way. And it can be very easy when you're desperate to build up a tourism economy, just at any cost bring the visitors. But you know, to have the confidence to think long term and say, yeah, here's the terms and conditions under which you can visit this. Like I say, in a very, not in that language, in a very hospitable, welcoming way. Yeah.
And that's how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus, in terms of over-tourism, and, you know, we've spoken already about Barcelona, for instance, and I think Venice probably suffers a bit from it as well. I was very conscious in Barcelona when I visited that we were not welcome. We were a private bus from out of town. We were getting in the way. They wanted us to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. And it wasn't a terribly pleasant visit. And I was very conscious, you know, when you do over egg the pudding, when you do slay the goose that lays the golden egg or whatever it is, you create a sort of a nastiness, a lack of welcome, which is the antithesis of what tourism ought to be. So in terms then of spots that do get too many numbers, what's your view about how to handle it?
Well, firstly, I hope you didn't get that feeling when you came to Killarney.
Oh, I would never get that feeling.
we take open arms to everybody when they arrive here. I suppose, you know, kind of what Tina was talking about as well, spreading the crowd is a very important thing. We've all heard of these paddy wagon tours where you can hop on the bus at 5 a.m. in Dublin and get to the Cliffs of Moher and go back, and that's not really good for anybody. So, you know, obviously as we're sitting here in Killarney, I'm going to be and being a Killarney man, you know, we've lovely cliffs in Kerry, and maybe that needs to be promoted a little bit more. You've plenty of visitors in Clare, so we'll take a few more after you if you want. But I think it's about spreading the crowd as much as possible in a sustainable manner, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of this is the result of a sort of mind or maybe tourism marketing that says, you know, this is one of the places you must see before you die. You know, when you're going through the 7 wonders of the world, and the Cliffs of Moher is on somebody's tick list, and that's where they want to go. I remember having an American sister-in-law, and she wanted to kiss the Blarney Stone. And I said, you don't want to kiss that Blarney Stone? And she said, yes, she did. And I absolutely ignored her. And I bypassed the Blarney Stone and took her on a wonderful tour, West Cork and into Kerry. And, you know, we stayed in lovely hotels, all the rest of it. But what did she say to me at the end of the holiday? I never got to kiss the Blarney Stone. And I learned the next time she came. I brought her to the Blarney Stone, and she was happy. So you do, I mean, we all have that box ticking exercise.
That's an interesting point, because I suppose when we travel in the marketplace selling our business, which is 2 hotels here in Killarney, or in the States selling, and we ask people have they been to Ireland, you'll get half the room that say, yeah, we've been to Ireland, it's amazing. The other half will say, oh, it's on our bucket list. But Ireland isn't it's nice to hear that it's a bucket list item, but Ireland doesn't need to be a bucket list item, and that's what we tell them. I mean, you could be standing in an office in New York selling Ireland, and it's closer to the Blarney Stone to kiss it than it is to San Francisco. So maybe Ireland, when they're selling themselves in the marketplace, need to realise that, you know, you don't need to come to Ireland for a week and do a whistle-stop tour around the country. You can come and do the southern area, you can come and do Northern Ireland.
Exactly, and to sell maybe an area, a region, a culture, rather than the reductionist thing of one box.
I know that ups their air miles, I know.
Yeah. Okay, well, just with you then, can we move on to the more general question of sustainability in terms of the way we run our tourism, our hotels, our accommodation, our eating, all the rest of it. You are one of a group of hotels in this area that have made a sustainability pact. Tell us about it.
That's right, yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know me, we have a family business here in Killarney. I walked here this morning because my office is 300 metres away, so that's real sustainability right there. So we, 22 hotels this year came together in Killarney and formed a group called Killarney Hotel Sustainability Group. Those 22 hotels represent 2,500 bedrooms in the town of Killarney. And in Killarney we have just over 3,500 hotel bedrooms, so the majority are represented there. And of course we're going to be welcoming more hotels very shortly. But as of this morning, we've signed a charter that Minister Griffin helped us launch this morning in relation to a commitment for 2020 that all these hotels will operate in a single-use plastic-free environment, and that we will cut our carbon emissions by 25%. So I suppose the easy part is getting everybody around the table, and it's a lot of good news, but the hard work is down to the individuals themselves carrying out the work next year.
I noticed things, for instance, like glass bottles of water in this hotel. And initially I remember thinking, God, it's got so heavy, you know, if I wanted to sort of put it in the bag to bring on stage or whatever, it's heavy. But of course that's exactly the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
But talk to me about leisure centres. Every hotel worth its salt in Ireland now, because of our weather, has a leisure centre. But what's the energy cost there?
Yeah, we kind of briefly talked about this last night, and I suppose, you know, hotels are a 24-hour operation. They don't close. They're open 365 days a year, so you might have a small hotel, but your carbon footprint is probably huge. So hotels with a leisure centre, generally a leisure centre in a hotel or a lodging business will consume about 30% of the energy of that property.
30%.
30%, yeah. So it's an educational thing, I think. Hotels are very good at, you know, growing RevPAR and growing occupancy and average rate and things.
Yeah.
But when you look at the nuts and bolts of the business, we're very good at looking at our labour percentages and our food costs. But do we really look at energy when bills come in for LPG and electricity? Are they analysed, or is it just a case of, I don't really know much about that, but it needs to be paid?
It sounds like a great argument to stop building leisure centres, doesn't it?
I think you can still have leisure centres if they're managed correctly.
With what? With cold water?
Cold water and pool covers and things like that can, you know, and proper ventilation and things like that can really reduce that aspect. But they're an important component of hotels as well, of course.
But in terms of cutting down the energy bill, hotels are expected to be welcoming, therefore they're expected to be bright and warm. And how do you balance a sustainable approach to energy with that need to have a blaze of lights and this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose hotels are designed to be warm and welcoming, as you say, but it's about getting the right balance and at least putting your best foot forward and trying to reduce your carbon footprint. I don't think there's any hotel in Ireland. I'd be shocked if there isn't a hotel without LED lighting. I mean, that's old news now. But again, looking at your boiler houses, heat pumps have been mentioned already today, but looking at solutions that can help reduce the amount of gas you're using in your building, electricity. There's technologies out there now, and you know, biomass has been talked about a lot, and there's grants available for these things. They'll all help hugely.
Tina, is there, you know, is it an advantage, do you think, for a hotel, for instance, like one of Marcus's, to be able to say, you know, we are an eco-friendly hotel, we minimise the amount of energy we use? Is there a younger generation coming up to whom that really matters?
Yeah. Well, we heard that just a little while ago after the lunch about the Millennials and the Gen Z. They make their decisions on the basis of, you know, the kind of considerations we were talking about today, automatically, not without thinking about it. So we've been a very consumerist generation, they're much more an impact legacy generation. So they're making different kinds of decisions and different variables.
Mind you, at the same time, at home, they're wearing t-shirts and turning up the central heating to God knows what level because it's mum and dad who pay.
Yeah, well, that's a different that's a different question. But I think there's two sides to is it an advantage? It's an advantage if you are talking about your sustainability in a way that's has integrity and is true. So if you say you're a sustainable hotel, you must actually deliver on that. It must not be just we don't wash your towels in order for it. It must go right throughout the hotel. An awful lot of it doesn't have to actually be in front of the visitor at all. It just becomes part of the experience of being in the hotel. And I think last week we had the announcement of Ireland's first carbon neutral hotel in Hotel Doolin, and I know you've been up there, Marcus, having a look. And there was an interview on the radio with the manager last week, and really everyone should Google it, because in very simple terms he explained what they did and what the impact was. So their business, while they have become carbon neutral, their business has trebled in the last 8 years. So it certainly would go against any idea that this is going to cost us money and we have to, to mitigate the loss almost. They've positioned themselves for the type of customer that is looking for that type of experience and have delivered and over-delivered on that. So it becomes a marketing advantage. That's
Does it? I mean, in his speech, John was talking, I think, about flight shaming.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's going to be the case, particularly for hotels and various, tourism accommodation, that they too could be energy shamed if they haven't shown a readiness to be environmentally conscious?
Absolutely, and that's already happening, I suppose. We've several major mega trends going on, but there's two in particular amongst normal visitors. We have a strive for sustainability and a growing desire to travel, and the two are on a kind of a collision course. And so consumers and visitors have to work out, how am I going to rationalise this with myself first and foremost? And when you arrive in a hotel, the last thing you want is a sense that that's adding to all the damage you've already done. So for me now, in a hotel where you're only given the single-use plastic shampoos, it's taken away my decision to be sustainable, and that's started to grow and almost fester a little bit. And would I feel it was less luxurious if it had been in a large container? Probably not. And they're the kind of questions. I think the desire to travel and the desire for sustainability are both going to continue to grow, and we have to get them to intertwine with each other rather than collide with each other. And the most obvious space is in hotels and on energy, but really the sustainability question is much, much wider than just energy, and most of the conversations tend to get stuck in that energy reduction part, which is vitally important, but like Marcus said there, that's now the low-hanging fruit. People just expect that to be addressed, and it's the much wider side of it that consumers will be looking for.
But Maurice does a tourism policy which is based on increasing numbers. I mean, every time you hear a Fáilte Ireland report or a Tourism Ireland report, it's about numbers, and it's about the inevitable push upwards of numbers, more tourists, whatever. I mean, does there come a point where we have to look at that policy and ask whether it is much too single-minded and not thoughtful enough in terms of the effect on the landscape and the environment here?
Well, I think we do already. I mean, I'm not an expert on tourism, but I know from my interaction with the tourism bodies that the dialogue, I would say, is much more about the quality of the experience rather than the number of people enjoying it. I mean, for example, somebody
Maurice, listen, it's about how much money we can squeeze out of the tourists and get away with it.
Yeah, but look at it another way. I mean, over the years, for example, with government funding, the OPW would invest in, restoring a castle or protecting a wall or whatever. And then the tour buses would climb back noise. Tour buses would arrive, and there's two ladies' loos, and there'd be a queue. And in the 30 minutes before the bus is going, the people at the end of the queue were just getting to the front. And we're in the 21st century, so that's just not acceptable. And the thinking has changed. So the investment has to be balanced. The car park, the cafe, everything else. And what that does, it doesn't necessarily increase the numbers. It actually, as I said earlier, because the people are going to be half an hour in the cafe and half an hour on the site, it actually allows a richer experience, believe it or believe it not, with less potential damage, less potential impact on the site. There's also technology. Again, Clonmacnoise, Noise, people have been there. I mean, there are three famous crosses that were seriously degrading. They were brought indoors, and facsimiles, which are, perfect to all, but the
Yes.
scientists
Yes, well done.
were put out that, and we're doing that more and more. So you can get, I know you want the authentic experience, but there's a balance there that I think is acceptable to people. And coming back to the earlier discussion, it's also about, when you fly to somewhere and there's a guilt feeling because you are expending energy and it's not friendly. But when I was thinking about the parks and the environment, when people hear that there's two meadows, the one on the left has been mowed every week and the one on the right may not look as pretty, but there's 141 different species of insects and flowers there.
Yeah.
You can see it. You actually have a kind of a good feeling when you drive home. Yeah, okay, I burned petrol in the car, but this wasn't totally a damaging experience.
The lovely meadow at Derrynane, I came out one morning and stayed there for a week this summer rather, and there actually was a guy, that song Measuring the Marigolds. Well, he was measuring a number of square metres of the meadow in order to count the plants to check whether the biodiversity had increased or decreased since the previous year. And of course the place was like a medieval tapestry. It was full of these beautiful wildflowers, and it was most impressive. Listen, I could go on about the OPW for a very long time. I'm a great admirer. Anyway, we have a chance now to hear comments or questions from the audience. Do we have anybody who wants to put a question or make a comment? I see somebody with his hand up there. Yes.
Thanks very much. Maurice Whelan, Ireland Walk Hike Bike is the company. Maurice, just in terms of Skellig in particular, is there an argument to stop allowing people onto it? I'm shocked that you're looking at developing it more and allowing more people onto it, because the site is already under threat, not the actual physical structure, but the flora, the fauna and the bird life, and it's already under threat. So I would much prefer less people to be on it. And the second part of that question is, do the people who take the people out there on the boats, do they contribute anything to the upkeep of the site?
Okay, there certainly is an argument for Skelligs and lots of sites like it not to make them tourist attractions at all. And we get two different forms of feedback. Some people saying, "Oh my God, people are only coming out here for the selfie with the puffin," and they're not relating Star Wars. Star Wars was a huge decision for us. So to allow a film there, this is a religious historic site, and there's a whole body of opinions that said, you're not respecting the religious heritage here. They're looking at the rocks, they're not looking at the not in the experience of the monks. But it's like anything else, it's a balance. And at the same time, wouldn't it be a shame if hundreds of thousands of people in Ireland and abroad couldn't experience that? And even if they are there and they take the selfie with the puffin, I don't think you go to Skellig and back without that inner enrichment in some shape or form. But there is a danger of populating with visitors, and we do control it very actively. And I didn't say we were increasing the numbers. If I did, what I meant was to increase the experience for people who are there, and to offer options if you're there for 3 hours, that you're not just facing this very steep and very physically demanding, so that there's an easier option maybe of a level walkway over to a lighthouse and with this bit of shelter, so that the people who do come back, it's a richer experience. They're even more positive about what the experience has been. And the pricing and the economy and sharing out the dividend, and that's a wider debate. That's a tough debate, a little bit over my pay grade, but it is a hard one. But look, I just look and say that those sites are really helping the local economy. They're helping the industry, not just the tourist industry, but the local industry in many different ways, and that's a net positive. How it's you could argue till the cows come home about how that is shared out amongst various parties.
Can I just ask you, would your view be that we should stop people going on the Skelligs altogether?
I would certainly wouldn't increase the numbers.
Yeah.
And I take on board exactly what he's saying. I mean, you do want to share that site. Anyone who's been there, it's magical. You do come away with a sense of amazement and wonderment from it. So, yes, allowing people out there, and I don't want to sound snobbish about it. I mean, my company has been bringing people out there for the last 20 years. It began with people who were really interested in flora, fauna and the monastic side. As we have seen now, it's movie fans that want to go out there. Everybody's entitled to go out there, I understand that. It doesn't matter whether you're interested in one or the other. So I suppose my concern is just for the site itself and also the natural environment more so.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a tough decision, but I would like the people to be very aware of maintaining that site.
And the fragility, to be aware of the fragility of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that you haven't added any handrails or anything else. You know, I do believe it should be left exactly as it is.
Okay, thanks. Now, anybody else want to? There's, yeah?
Sorry, hi, Marion Sullivan, Early's Fern 4. I'm actually an archaeologist by profession, so I would have a very strong opinion on the volume of people that are being currently allowed on skilling, because ultimately it will cause huge destruction to the site. I mean, I believe at the moment, you know, you're 6 or 8 months booking in advance, and I've heard rumours that it's €200 to go out there, so, you know, I would advise caution. I suppose it would be my message.
Yeah. I was able to book within a week this year, and I think it was 70 or 80 euros to go out, but I'm sure different people have different prices.
I know of friends of mine actually who went during the summer peak season, and it was €200 each.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I can see why, as an archaeologist, you'd be very aware of the danger of something absolutely priceless being damaged. Yeah.
John Connolly, Galway City Council. Is it possible just to make a contribution regarding Professor Sweeney's presentation?
I beg your pardon, could you say that again?
I just asked a question to Professor Sweeney.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
He's here in the front row. Yeah.
I suppose just one of your first slides was a kind of a travelling through time from 1951 to the present day, and how the Earth's climate or the temperature has changed in that period. And I suppose the final image was obviously quite worrying. But if I read it accurately, and I did, I suppose initially I found it hard to follow. There was periods during that time where temperature raised in certain locations and then went down again. And I'm just wondering, what was the explanation for that? But again, I suppose the final image was quite concerning. The second thing, I suppose, is the general theme, and you commented on it yourself, just about our responsibility and how I'm not sure if we're gathering that we all have responsibility here. And in the presentation previous to this era, one of the figures she gave was that 62% of people recognised that they themselves had responsibility, but that they also felt that 80% of companies, or 80% of people felt that companies and industries had a responsibility. So we see there again that we're nearly willing to put the responsibility on somebody else.
Yeah.
And I've often heard it commented as well by people that, you know, Ireland is small in this terms. Professor Sweeney actively showed that we're not that small, but that there's a greater responsibility in other countries. And it was mentioned how young people now realise and recognise the threat. I think it's one area where our education system has worked well. The Green Flag Initiative in school probably started around the time of millennials were born, and it's having an impact now, I think. But really and truly, even yourself, Olivia, you mentioned that young people, despite participating in the strikes and making the issue, are willing to wear t-shirts at home upon the heat. And there was notable concern too, after the climate strikes, in some of those urban areas, there was a lot of waste left behind. So I suppose, are we really gathering our responsibility here? What else we need to do to make people see their responsibility? And the last question was just in terms of changing biodiversity. And it's really worrying that we have some of our natural flora and fauna at risk because of climate change. I just wonder, Professor Sweeney, is there an opportunity in changing biodiversity? You mentioned the forest chestnut scale. I know it's not welcome, but are there other aspects where biodiversity is changing and we could potentially see some opportunity in that?
Okay, John Sweeney. Do
Thank
you mind
you.
standing up, John, so they could
Okay.
see you? Yeah.
Yeah, on the first point, yes, global climate has always changed. There's ups and downs lasting a few decades normally in the 20th century. And yes, there was a brief period of cooling around 1940 to 1960. At those stages, I think we recognise now that the human impact on climate wasn't anything like as marked as it was 50, 60 years later. And what we've done in modelling is simply run climate models with pre-industrial levels of CO2 and look at how the projections match or don't match what the temperature curve has been in the past century. and in fact they don't match at all. It's only when you put in the human contribution that you find an almost perfect match with the temperature curve of the past 30, 40 years. So yes, there will always be ups and downs, and if we have a major volcanic eruption on the equator, for example, in the next 6 months, we'll get a cooling of the global atmosphere by maybe 0.5 degree. There are certain things at work in the natural system which mean that we don't have a smooth transition in terms of the temperature changes. So it doesn't negate in any way our understanding of the human role. As regards biodiversity, well, I mean, we're seeing changes which I think are universally negative. We're seeing our native species in particular being competed out of existence. We've lost a lot of our native grasses. The green island that you see outside is perennial ryegrass, which is itself not native to Ireland, and it's only kept going by intensive fertilisers every year. So we have lost a lot of our native species, and with it we're losing also some of our animal and bird species on a scale which we haven't seen before. I don't think there's any positive aspects of it. Sometimes when you have some of the freshwater sort of zebra mussels, for example, in our lakes, they clear the water for a few years, and it looks as if they're doing good. But in fact, the long-term trend is universally bad, even in that case as well. So I think when you reduce biodiversity, what you're effectively doing is you're reducing the stability of the ecosystem, you're reducing the ability of the ecosystem to handle stress in the future. It's rather like if you have less species, you have less options. And as we lose those species, even if we are replacing them by invasive species, we're cutting off our options for the future. This is very clearly evident, not so much in Ireland, but in places like the Amazon rainforest, for example, where we're losing so many species that we don't even know exist at the moment, which may be beneficial for those that come after us, for example, for medical purposes. So I don't think we can simplify it.
The point he's making about all of us needing to accept our responsibility and perhaps not recognising sufficiently that unless we do accept our responsibility.
Conor Pope said this morning too, that people are struggling, when we all accept, people are struggling to pay for it.
Yeah.
And we're reluctant to pay.
I think it's fair to say that we as individuals should do what we can, but we do need guidance and we need leadership from above to actually make a difference. So I think, as one of the speakers said this morning, we need to have a pathway that we can conform to, that we can be satisfied that our individual efforts are leading in a certain direction. We shouldn't feel guilty about what we're doing or what we're not doing too much, but we should feel guilty if we're not being given the guidance, I think, to enable us to do the right thing in this area.
Grand. Thank you very much, John. And yes, yourself.
Hi, it's me again. Another question. I'm Tara Shine from Change by Degrees. So just to pick up on one thing, I think one of the main obstacles to individual action is information and education. So follow Change by Degrees on any of the channels and you'll get a constant stream of really easy hints and tips to help you make changes in your life, whether you're at home or at work. And my question is for Marcus. Marcus, congratulations on the initiative for the Killarney hotels. It's really impressive to see you all come together and lead in this way. You mentioned the work that you're doing on single-use plastics and energy efficiency as two things where you're making gains. I just wondered, what's the next big thing? What's the next kind of sustainability challenge that you're all going to work together on? That would be nice to know.
Okay, good question, and nice to meet you in person after all the emails, thanks. I suppose the group was formed this year, and we've met a number of times and we kind of share best practice and ideas on how we can be more sustainable as businesses. For our own business, and we've two hotels, so the Killarney Park, which is 67 rooms, and the Ross, which is my sister Ciara runs, which is 29 rooms, so about 100 bedrooms in total. We're looking at moving over towards green electricity. We're not obviously on the natural gas grid down here in Killarney, even though we'd love to be. So we're looking at moving also to bio-LPG. We hope to have that completed by the end of the year. And that'll obviously make a huge reduction in our carbon footprint. The area around single-use plastic is a very hot topic at the moment, and I'm guessing we're probably going to be in the Killarney Park one of the first 5-star hotels in Ireland to move to more bulk toiletries. So going from your traditional 30 millilitre bottle to 295. And we work with a company called Clean the World. They're a worldwide company. They're a worldwide initiative, I should say, and they collect all our used toiletries and soaps and things like that and recycle them. They go to poorer countries. So again, it's for our hotel group of 22 hotels. It's about sharing those ideas, and we're here in the Great Southern today. Etienne's at the back of the room, and they have great things going on in their hotels, so they come to the meeting and explain to us what they're doing, and it's about sharing best practice. And I think businesses in Killarney in general have been very good at sharing information, working together, and a rising tide lifts all ships. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Yeah.
Just to turn to Tina, part of your business is training people for tourism. Are companies interested in being trained in terms of being ecologically more sustainable, and is that part of what you do?
I think today's debate right now shows a little bit of the difficulty. If you were to ask anybody here what should I get trained in, it's difficult to distill this debate down into what I need to do in my business, and to separate what in this we have to address as a species the climate change issue and sustainability. There's a certain amount of decisions get addressed by world leaders, a certain amount by policymakers, a certain amount by local governments, and it's hard to know for a business, well, what's my part and what can I do and how can I do it? And this debate right now is quite overwhelming to an individual business to walk back out. So yes, people do want to know how to do it. They want the roadmap that was just referred to there. Those roadmaps exist, they're highly accessible, and yet people are unaware of them. And just take biodiversity, for example. Biodiversity Ireland, based in Waterford, have a business biodiversity implementation plan that every single person and every single business today could sign up to and implement on a gradual basis. The same as Calor Bio LPG would be delighted with everyone's business right now if it was available. And I think another thing, and we're ashamed to leave the debate with this kind of tourism becoming the bad boy in the room or the bad girl in the room, whatever that is, when tourism actually has the potential to be a huge contributor and a huge regenerator to a better type of society. I think the questions on climate change, resource efficiency is cost efficiency. Going green saves your money business. It isn't a question of either or, on wastewater, energy. Where tourism has a huge potential to deliver benefit is in terms of how it engages with communities, how it becomes a guardian of heritage and a guardian of landscapes, much along the lines of what Maurice was talking about. And the industry is in danger of feeling awfully guilty and awfully destructive to the world, when in fact it should step into the space of acknowledging its obligations and resource efficiency, and then bringing to the world this huge contribution it can make on everything else. It's the one industry that goes into every corner, every part of every country in the world. And so if it owns that responsibility, it can be a huge net contributor.
Okay, well, I'd like to say thank you very much to our sustainability panel, and let's